Hey guys, welcome back to Intelligent Faith 315. This is Pastor Jay. So good to be with you. This is part 2 of our series, The Image of God. Or you could also call this the Anthropological Argument. The reason we're calling it that is because, as you can see behind me, according to the Christian worldview, man was made in the image of God. And of course, if you're an atheist or a naturalist, you're going to mock that and not believe that. But taking that as a premise, if that be true, that man was made in the image of God, then we should be able to find in the makeup of man, in humanity, as we look at anthropology, we should be able to find aspects of humanity that point back to our Creator, back to our Designer. This idea of being created in the image of God, it means that God not only is the Creator, but that He in some sense made humanity in the capacity to reflect Him. That certain abilities that God, our Creator, has are reflected within mankind as well. To a much more limited degree, but nonetheless they're reflected. And so we were using this acronym, I.M.A.G.E, to go through these 5 aspects, I believe, of our anthropology, of our human makeup, that I believe point powerfully and persuasively to the fact that God has indeed created us in His image. And just to review, this is intellectually, morally, artistically, the G is for God-hungry, and then the E is empirically. I think those are 5 aspects of our anthropology that point back to the fact that we were indeed designed and created by God. So we're glad you've joined us. If you're a Christian, we're glad you're here. Intelligent Faith 315 exists to equip and train Christians with some of the good, solid evidence that exists for the Christian worldview and faith. So we're a basic ministry. We try to do the best that we can and give you good resources and tools that can help you understand the great reasons that you can be a Christian rationally, intellectually, logically. If you're not a Christian, we are especially glad, I'm especially glad that you're here. So this really is something for you to consider if you're an atheist, a naturalist, a materialist. Is this a good explanation or not? And as we talked about last time, if it's not a good explanation, if you do not think it's a plausible argument, that's fine. That's fantastic. But then I would encourage you to come up with a better and superior explanation of these 5 different facets of our human anthropology. These things that we know to be true about mankind, what would you say? Because, again, this is the way to judge and test your worldview. We don't want to go off of blind faith. We don't want to just believe what someone tells us. You need to test everything and accept what is good. You need to look at the facts, look at the evidence, obviously think through things logically and rationally and intelligently, and only if my worldview can pass certain worldview tests, such as compatibility, correspondence, is it testable and verifiable, etc.? Is it internally consistent? Does it have scientific adequacy? Does it have experiential relevancy? Does it have logical consistency? If my worldview can pass those kind of tests, well, then I'm justified in keeping my worldview, because I've tested it, I've investigated it, and it has passed the test with flying colors. However, if you watching this video, if you have never put your worldview to the test, that should be one of the things that is your top priority. You need to test your worldview. You need to see if what you believe makes sense. Does it match up with reality? Is it compatible? And you may be saying to yourself, well, of course it does. That's why I believe it. But my question is, have you ever actually tested it? Have you ever actually investigated it, put it through some kind of an intellectual, rational, logical filter, an evidential filter, to see if indeed it is strong? If you put it through the test, if you put it through these filters, and your worldview turns out to not be as strong as you thought, if you are a consistent and rational person, you should reject that worldview. You should let it go, jettison it, in favor of a stronger worldview. This is why I came to Christianity, because biblical Christianity is the most logical and rational worldview. It explains the features of reality in the best and deepest sense. It has the most sufficient explanation for a wide array of features that we see in our experience, even such things as evil and suffering, and of course, human anthropology. So I do encourage you, subject your own worldview to that test. Be courageous, intellectually and rationally, put your worldview to the test. Last time, we began with talking about the first one, I. That intellectually, it seems indeed, to me at least, and to many other Christian thinkers, that intellectually we can see the stamp of a designer, the stamp of a creator upon humanity. In the sense that our capabilities to use reason, rational thinking, and to obtain knowledge about reality, it seems that the best explanation to explain these features that we see of the human mind, the best explanation is that a divine mind, an eternal mind, has given us our minds. That there is a divine reason that has given us reason. That there is a divine thinker that has given us the capacity to think. And of course, there is an eternal consciousness that has given rise to our consciousness. Rationale, the capacity for knowledge and thinking, and consciousness itself cannot arise from nothingness. Consciousness cannot just emerge a non-living matter. We've never seen that happen, and that doesn't even logically make very much sense at all. How would it happen? What mechanism? Has it ever been observed? No, it's not. But what we do observe, and what we know to be true in our experience, is that consciousness gives birth to other consciousness. Minds give birth to other minds, reason to other reason. So we did look at this last time. We investigated a couple of famous intellectual figures from the past. We talked about Albert Einstein. We looked at Isaac Newton, and then, of course, Plato and Aristotle, coming to the conclusion at the end of that first part that it does seem that the most plausible and reasonable explanation for why men such as these, the greatest scientists, the greatest thinkers and philosophers, really of human history, can think about the things that they do, can conceptualize of abstract things like mathematics, philosophical principles, laws of logic, is that, again, a divine mind has given them this reasoning ability. That reason comes from reason, mind comes from mind, consciousness from consciousness. Today we're going to move on to our second point, and in the acronym I.M.A.G.E, this is the second letter. The M, I apologize, let me just go through this real quick. It's not just ancient intellectuals. It's not just ancient intellectuals that are appealing to God as a sufficient explanation. It's also modern intellectuals. Let me read through this quickly, and then we will just get on to the M, as I said, in our acronym. So Vera Kistikowski, she is an MIT physicist, a very intelligent, rational lady. She says, the exquisite order displayed by our scientific understanding of the physical world calls for the divine. So, a much more mathematically intelligent person than I am, she believes that the exquisite order found in the physical universe calls for a divine mathematical designer. Of course, everybody agrees that mathematics is the language of the universe. It then begs the question, what is math? How is math even here? How can it be the case? If it's an intellectual, conceptual thing, it's an immaterial quality. How did math get created? We didn't create it or invent it, we discovered it. Well, Vera Kistikowski, an MIT physicist, she would say that it points to the existence of a creator. Also, Roger Penrose, a mathematician and author, says this, I would say the universe has a purpose. It's not there just somehow by chance. Again, a modern-day intellectual mathematician and author saying that randomness and chaos doesn't sufficiently explain the origin of the universe. Rather, it has a purpose. And of course, if there's a purpose, there's a purposer. There would be a designer. Frank Tipler, professor of mathematical physics, very interesting quote here. He says, from the perspective of the latest physical theories, not religious theories, from the latest physical theories, Christianity is not a mere religion, but an experimentally testable science. So Frank Tipler, professor of mathematical physics, says that Christianity is an experimentally testable science. That to him, he believes it's legit. He believes that the science confirms it. It's not just in the realm of the supernatural, but also in the empirical and in the physical phenomena that can be investigated. He believes it's a testable science, which is true. Christianity can be falsified. If you were to perhaps disprove the physical historical resurrection of Jesus Christ, Christianity would be a joke. Absolutely. And there's other aspects of Christianity that can falsify it as a philosophical system or as a religion. It can be falsified. But he believes it's a testable science. Okay, as I said, we're coming now to the second part. M is for morally. In other words, the humans have the God-given ability to perceive moral values and possess a deep hunger for moral justice. So again, this capacity that we have to perceive morality, our quest, our hunger for justice, how do we best explain that? Now, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with this, this is called abductive reasoning. When we look at a set of known facts, when we examine a set of facts that we know to be true, and then seek to find an explanation for this set of facts, this is called abductive reasoning. Now, abductive reasoning is different from deductive reasoning or inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, you could think of an upside-down triangle. Deductive reasoning, if you could think of an upside-down triangle, it argues from a large principle down to a particular instance or a particular thing. So deductive reasoning goes from the universal down to the particular. That's deductive. Philosophy operates most of the time on deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning would be just a regular triangle. And inductive reasoning, which the scientific enterprise and scientific investigation is built on inductive reasoning goes, just like a triangle, from the small particular thing, an experiment or a sample, the particular thing, trying to establish a universal principle. So deduction goes from the universal down to a particular thing. Induction goes from a particular thing down to the universal principle. But different from both of those, as I said, is abduction. Abduction is looking at a set of known facts and then trying to find the best, most reasonable explanation for this known set of truths. So for example, when you take your car to the mechanic, they use abductive reasoning. They're looking at certain symptoms that your engine may have and trying to come up with the explanation that best covers all of them. A crime scene investigator, CSI, or Sherlock Holmes, would come into a crime scene and identify various features that are there and try to figure out what is the best explanation to explain that. And so this isn't deduction or induction, this is rather abduction. And then also a doctor would use this as well. You have certain medical, biological symptoms. What is the best explanation for this set of features that we do observe? And so again, that's what we're doing here. We're saying that there are certain features in reality, in anthropology actually, in human makeup, such as our moral capacity that need to be explained. A good worldview will have explanatory power. It will be able to give a deep, profound explanation of these features. It will also have explanatory scope. It will be able to explain the widest range of these features. It will also have a low degree of ad hocness, just making stuff up and coming up with new information. And it will also have a high degree of plausibility. So abductive reasoning is what we're engaged in here. Again, ask yourself the question, how is it possible that humanity has this capacity to perceive morality? How is it possible that if mankind was spontaneously generated from non-living matter, from animated mud, animated dirt, etc., when did the moral capacity come in to human beings? Now, if you're watching this video and you are an atheist, a naturalist, a humanist, you obviously believe that you have a moral capacity. I mean, you're probably thinking something to the effect of, man, these wacky Christians are wrong or perhaps even evil to be teaching this stuff to children. You know, you may perhaps think something like that. Or these Christians are wrong to be teaching this idea of hell, which doesn't exist. You may even think something like that. So all of us would agree that we have some idea of morality. Now, there's, of course, a difference of opinion whether morality is relative or whether it's absolute. And I'm not going to get into that here. We'll cover that in the future. But my point is, you have the ability, you have the capacity to perceive morality at all. For example, when you hear of things like serial killers, And you read of things like this. Perhaps if a serial killer got loose in your city at one time, or you do some historical investigation about serial killers from the past. Something happens inside of us when we read of situations like this. Something happens to us when we read of people eating other people, of people torturing other humans for fun. When we read of certain men or women cannibalizing other people or wearing their skin, there are certain things that happen as we look throughout history, and it's pretty shocking and frightful. And most people, in their moral perceptions, their feelings, their emotions, there's like kind of like a smoke detector. It goes off, and those kind of things with serial murderers, mass murderers, are what we call, it's morally abhorrent. It's disgusting. It's repulsive morally. Or perhaps, as we think about Adolf Hitler, and we think about the kind of things that Adolf Hitler did to at least 6 million Jews. Also, lots of Christians, lots of handicapped people, that Adolf Hitler sought to wipe out millions and millions of people. And then, of course, he had scientists like Joseph Mengele do horrible, horrible experiments on children, on babies, on people while they were still alive, just to see what would happen, just to see how the human body would react. When we hear things like this, it's shocking for us. Something in us, innately, kind of in our moral programming, it just goes off. I myself happen to be German. I speak German. Ich habe in Deutschland gewohnt für 3 Jahren. I lived there for 3 years. And I've gone to the concentration camps. I've gone to Buchenwald and Dachau. And when I've gone there and seen this stuff as a little kid, I mean, it's absolutely horrifying. It's morally disgusting. And you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why is that the case? Because to be consistent on an atheistic, naturalistic worldview, if there is no God, then there is no ultimate, eternal, foundational grounding for moral values. There's no anchor point. In other words, if there is no moral lawgiver, then there is no moral law. If there is no moral legislator, then there's no moral legislation. And so, in a very real sense, there is nothing good. There is nothing evil. There's just things. And so we wouldn't be or shouldn't be horrified by massacres, genocide, serial killers, etc. But we are, you see. That is the interesting thing about it, is that we seem to be repulsed by moral violations. On the flip side, there is a positive, that when things happen, we have also not just a repulsion, we have a craving for justice. We have a craving innately, internally, that things would be set right, that evil is vanquished, that wrongs are righted, that bad people would be punished for their crimes. We have this longing for justice inside of humanity. It fuels our legal system. It's something that is very real in our experience. And people may try to intellectualize it and kind of talk you out of it. But if you're a viewer, you need to be honest about that. That you also, and so do I, have a hunger and a need, an attraction for justice. We want justice. We need justice. And at times, especially when you're wronged or someone you love, you crave justice. Why is that the case? Which idea, which theory makes more sense? The idea that God is a righteous, perfect God who himself always does justly and is good and has put in his creatures, in his creation, a craving for moral justice as well. That God himself is a morally perfect being and so has created humanity in his image with the ability to perceive moral perceptions, the ability to have moral perceptions and to perceive moral values and duties. Or that we somehow are just making all of this up and we have been spontaneously animated from dirt or rocks or what have you. You see, animals don't really have moral compunctions or obligations. We do witness occasionally altruistic behavior in baboons, or caring from the mother to the the infants and so forth. But most of these are just instinctual habits. And of course, I guess someone could say the same thing for humanity, but I don't think that really matches up with what we see in our observations. It's much deeper for humanity. It is very passionate inside of us, and this moral programming, so to say, seems to be innate. This man here, I think his name is James Barrie. He is the psychologist professor at Oxford University. I believe his name is James Barrie. I'll verify that and correct it if I'm wrong. But this psychologist at Oxford University, he's been doing some interesting experimentation in terms of the things that humans are hardwired to believe. And lo and behold, this man, not being a Christian, he has discovered that we are hardwired to believe in morality, hardwired to believe in right and wrong. Interestingly enough, he also discovered that humans are hardwired to believe in God. Now, don't take my word for it. Just do some of your own investigation, and this happens to be the case. He calls it agent causation. He also calls it innate theism, that believing in theos, in God, is an innate, pre-programmed belief that you have from before birth. And they also call it natural teleology, that they, through experimentation with children and infants, have discovered it is natural and normal for children to perceive of agents in the world that are causing certain things. They believe in agent causation. It's natural for humans. We believe in God's existence. But he also discovered that it's natural and innate for people to believe in right and wrong. And he's done some interesting studies on the craving for justice, that people will go to great lengths to punish people who they believe have done them wrong. And again, ask yourself, what is the better explanation? That this just happens to be a byproduct of socio-biological evolution, some kind of a spin-off that's an illusion? Or is it something perhaps that is deeper than that, more fundamental to humanity? It's innate. It is inside of us. It is part of our programming, so to say, part of our hardwiring, which these gentlemen are now discovering. Which theory is more plausible? To me, it does seem to make much more sense that a morally perfect eternal being, God, has created us in His image, and He has put His stamp upon us, His signature upon us. And He has also made us moral creatures, moral agents, with the ability to perceive right and wrong, to perceive moral values and moral duties. And also, we have a craving for justice, to see that that wrongs are righted and that evils are made good, that things are brought to justice, people are brought to justice, that justice prevails. We have this moral perception and this moral drive within us. That is the second aspect of our anthropology, of our human makeup, that to me, I believe it points powerfully in the direction of God having created us. That's all we'll cover for this time. We hope you'll come back and join us again as we talk about man's artistic abilities, the fact that we are God-hungry, especially atheists, that they are God-hungry, and this has come out in many of their quotes. And finally, that empirically, as you look at the design of humanity, we can see that we are indeed intelligently designed. I encourage you to come back and join us next time. Until then, have an intelligent faith.